Welcome, family. Welcome to Blacklogic. And I just want to do a continuation of the conversation we had on Monday evening about why we should vote. And I did something. You guys are familiar with the platform Chat GPT, where there's alternatives or there are secondary platforms that are similar to Chat GPT. Google has a platform called Bard, BARD, and Microsoft Bing has a version of Chat GPT where you type in certain questions to create answers and templates of whatever, right? It has all these different functionalities. So I thought it would be just interesting if I were to type in why Black people should vote. Okay. That's the question that I actually typed into the Bard AI software that's created by Google. And so this is what Bard said. It says Black people should vote because it is their right and their civic duty as American citizens. Now, when somebody states that it's your duty, I feel as though when someone said it's your duty, it's like you're obligated to do so, which is kind of already trick words, in my opinion. It's not your duty. It's your right to vote, but it's not your civic duty to vote, because you don't have to be a citizen of this country and be obligated and or your duty to vote. That's just, again, my own conjecture. As I stated before in that Monday night address, that I'll be speaking a lot of hyperboles, conjecture, bias, perspective, etc. Let me continue though. Voting is a way to have a voice in the government and to make sure that their interests are represented. It is also a way to hold elected officials accountable for their actions. Now, that I do agree with. When we think about this, that second part of what I just read is very powerful, because ever since the 1960s, we have been going against our own special interests. Again, let me read it again. Voting is a way to have a voice in the government and to make sure that their interests are representative. They're talking about your interests. It didn't say America's interests. It said their interests, Black people's interests are represented. Now, I want to ask anyone who see this in the comment section of the chat, when have you voted or known someone in your family, your friends, someone you're associated with that voted, if they were Black, that represented their own special interests? Can anybody tell me that, please? Can anybody tell me when you voted for your own people's special interests? This is what Google is saying. I typed in why Black people should vote in Bard, the AI software that's similar to Chat GPT, but this is the version that Google created. Then it goes on to say, it is also a way to hold elected officials accountable for their actions. Now, that is powerful as well, because when you think about it, if you already vote, you're not holding your elected officials accountable. When you use your vote as a bargaining chip, if you use your vote for ransom, hold your vote for ransom rather, that is when you start to hold those elected officials accountable. Do you not? Because we understand in the presidency, once we so-called elect a president and a vice president, a majority part of their cabinet is selected by them. You have no say so. So essentially, when you vote in a particular president, they select their cabinet, who's going to be their supporting cast to move and pass legislation through the Senate, through the House, through Congress, etc., right? So that means that your vote is very, very powerful, is it not? So just giving your vote away, you're giving your power away. So you can't hold your elected officials accountable if you're just voting to vote and thinking that is your civic duty. It's your civic duty to hold those elected officials accountable by the way of your vote before you cast it. Does that make any sense? Let me continue. Historically, Black people have been not the right to vote. See, you see how they use that trope? You see how they keep using that talking point to make you feel boxed in, to make you feel pressured, like, oh, we've been pushed down and bottled. We couldn't even vote at a certain time. So it's our duty to vote. I feel as though like a lot of this AR software is kind of liberal in a sense. It's like the Democrats had some software designers and they say, hey, go put him on the Google team. So when answers pop up of this nature, we already have a predisposed answer. I digress. Good evening, Jermaine Anderson. Nice to see you, brother. Nice to see everybody here this evening. Well, this is not going to be a long video. I just want to push a point here because that's why we're going the continuation of the video we did on Monday, family. It says historically, Black people have been denied the right to vote. The 15th Amendment to the United States Constitution, which was ratified in 1870, guaranteed the right to vote to all citizens, regardless of race, color, or previous conditions of servitude. Now, if you notice, the 15th Amendment allowed everybody the right to vote. But for some strange reason, Black people, we are still fighting for our right to vote, right? Because they're making it difficult for certain people of a certain income class, which is majority Black people, vote. You need IDs, you need all this special paperwork to vote. Yeah, that is a hindrance for us to vote, especially when you don't have the income to vote. But according to the 15th Amendment, everybody, according to the race, color, and previous conditions of servitude, has the right to vote. Not the duty, but the right. However, many states enacted poll taxes, right? Making it difficult for Black people to taxes because, again, we have always been the poorest class of people in America, right? They've enacted poll taxes, literacy tests, and other discriminatory measures to prevent Black people from voting because, unfortunately, we have a large population that was uneducated, a large population that was undermined by the way of employment, meaning we couldn't get jobs, and literacy tests, right? When it comes to education, undereducated. We didn't have enough schools. They allowed us only one school per capita in a certain region. They did all these things to diminish the Black vote. So we wouldn't put people in office, white or Black, to gain a foothold, to take a further step in progress of Black empowerment. We all understand this. A lot of us already know the history of this. These measures were not overturned until the civil rights movement of the 1950s and the 1960s. Today, there are still efforts to suppress the vote of Black people. These efforts include voter ID laws, as I just stated previously, gerrymandering, and cuts to early voting and other voting conveniences. It is important for Black people to vote to overcome these obstacles and to make sure that their voices are heard. When Black people vote, they can elect officials who will represent their interests. They can elect officials that will represent their interests and who will fight for the policies that benefit their communities. I can't make this up. I can't make this up. And at the point, yeah, there's a lot of Democratic cities that are majority Black, that are impoverished, that are in shambles. And we have a lot of these Black coons, these Black raccoons in place that hasn't put the amount of tax dollars back into the infrastructure of that said community, that Black community. But as it say right here, they're giving you the answers to the test, family. They're saying that by your election or by the vote of your election of who you're going to elect inside of office, that will fight for policies to benefit your community. So when have you voted for a candidate, whether it be on the local, state, or federal level, that they said that they were going to directly benefit your community? When has that happened? It goes on to say, they can also help to shape the future of the country. Voting is a powerful tool, and Black people should use it to make their voices heard. This is from Bard of Google. It said it's a powerful tool. It's a powerful tool. With a tool, family, you can either use it or not use it. You can either use it or not use it. And what this basically telling me is we have been going about this the wrong way the entire time, especially those late baby boomers, as well as Generation X, as well as the millennials. These past 3 generations have been casting votes for the Democratic Party and even the Republican Party for our own personal special interest. It doesn't work that way. If you're not voting on a community-based level, then your vote is then divided and has no power. Some people say, well, my individual vote really doesn't make a difference. Well, it does when it's collective, because then we choose who we want to be our representative in office. Does that make sense? Yeah. When there's 4 or 5 candidates running for president and you have the Black community, we're voting for affordable health care. We're voting for criminal justice laws. We're voting for the streets of Chicago to be fixed. We're voting for barrier walls in Florida so hurricanes don't tear up the city. We're voting for houses in Louisiana to be, risen so the next flood that comes don't destroy the houses. You guys know the old saying, a house divided amongst itself will fall. So there's something that we can absolutely learn and take from other groups. These so-called other groups, the Asians, the Hispanics, the whites, they all, in a sense, and I kind of exclude white people because they're the vast majority of the population in America, because their vote can be divided, right? But we have the power to swing any election from the sheer numbers, because Black Americans, foundational Black Americans, we're around anywhere from 50 to 60 million. And they keep telling you guys that we are 13.4% of the population. No, the hell we're not. We're probably anywhere between 15 and 17%. And I know the Census Bureau tells us that Hispanics are 19% of the population, but I don't know how they're even counting them, because I'm just going to let you know, family, and this is no hit to those who are in the country legally, a vast majority of Hispanics, and it don't matter the country they come from, are illegals. Okay? Are illegals. But it says voting is a powerful tool and Black people should use it to make their voices heard. To elect officials who will fight for policies that benefit Black communities, such as affordable housing, quality education, and criminal justice reform. These are some of those specific reasons they're stating why Black people should vote. I see you, Desert Stars. He says, what are your favorite stocks and ETFs to buy for a long-term portfolio? We are talking about voting, Desert Stars. So if you're not talking about voting, then we're not talking. But it says here specific reasons why Black people should vote: to elect officials who will fight for policies that benefit Black communities, such as affordable housing, quality education, and criminal justice reform. Family, we have already done that. We voted for affordable housing, quality education, and criminal justice. And where are we now as a collective group? See, I know, I get it, family. A lot of us, I won't say a lot, I'll say a good percentage of us is doing financially well. So we tend to focus on those things that will benefit us personally. If you're tired of Negroes breaking into your car, if you're tired of the crime rate, if you're tired of the news media making Black people look bad, then guess what? You and I, they and them, have the propensity and the ability to organize, unify, and vote collectively for candidates who are going to be the benefit of Black communities. I know a lot of you who own businesses voted for Donald Trump because he did a lot of things for small and big businesses, all sorts of tax breaks, tax deductions, money to build your business, so on and so forth. But collectively, it has not helped the Black communities that reside within the United States of America. It has not. But again, this is the information I'm reading from Bard, which is the Google AI software that is similar to Chat GPT. Let me move on. It says here to hold elected officials accountable for their actions. When Black people vote, they can make sure that their elected officials are responsive to their needs. See, this is where it gets tricky at, family, because it says when Black people vote, they can make sure that their elected officials are responsive to their needs. That's totally incorrect. And let me tell you why. Once you vote, you have no power. Once you vote, the only thing that you can do to these so-called elected officials is complain. You said you was going to donate 200 million to the HBCUs. You said that you was going to make quality education. You said you was going to wipe away student debt. You said that you was going to take away stop and frisk. Once your vote is cast, family, you have no other bargaining chip. You see how that's tricky? Because it tells you when Black people vote. Voting is an action that is dead upon arrival. Voting is an action that's dead upon arrival, meaning that when you vote, you're done. You have no more power. But see, when you hold that vote and you demand said actions, and they're not putting things in black and white, that is when you hold the power. But if you like, well, we were thinking about donating, the most money ever to be granted to HBCUs and going inside the hoods and ghettos to empower Black people. We were really thinking about that. Oh, are you guys going to do that? I think there's a good chance if we're elected, we're going to do that. You see how they speak in these very indirect terms, that they're not going to really promise you anything, but they're going to beat around the bush, so to speak. They're really not going to promise you anything, but they're going to talk about it. They're going to speak about it. They're going to mention it, right? Because they're banking on how stupid you are. They're banking on how intelligent you are by simply mentioning certain things. You guys believe that they're going to go out and do something for you, Republican or Democrat. And I'm kind of feeling this energy from certain influences on social media that they're wanting Black people to vote Republican, where that has not been beneficial for Black people, just as well it hasn't been beneficial for Democrats. So I don't know where that energy is coming from. And I'm not going to name names. I'm not a very divisive people within the Black empowerment space, but I've been hearing a lot of people kind of deflecting the energy and voting towards the Republicans versus the Democrats. And I don't like it because we know that both parties hasn't done shit for Black people. They haven't done nothing for either one of us. It goes on to say to make their voices heard on issues that matter to them, such as police brutality, racial profiling, and voter suppression. I'm getting tired of the voter suppression, family. Now, we know that's coming hard and strong from the Republican Party. The whole so-called voter suppression, by the way, the voter ID laws. Okay? They're kind of bringing back the old tactics from the 50s and 60s with the voter ID laws, kind of like that Jim Crow era sort of way to diminish the Black vote. But police brutality and racial profiling, they will bring up things like the Emmett Till bill or the George Floyd bill, which doesn't benefit Black people as a whole, because if you guys have noticed, we are still getting killed and brutalized by the race soldiers in the street. Black Americans, foundational Black Americans, need to be a protected class. Qualified immunity needs to be stricken from any police officer. Because what you guys basically don't understand about qualified immunity is this one thing. Qualified immunity is a get out of jail free card for police officers. This thing about this, if you're an American citizen and you own a legal firearm and you ride around and somebody gets on your nerves or somebody makes you angry or mad and you pull out your gun and you fire at them and you kill them. And when the police comes, say, sir, what occurred here? We know that your firearm is legal, but why did you kill this? Why did you shoot this person? Why did you kill this person? I fear for my life. Okay, well, good. Have a good night. Go home. Because here's the thing. I want you guys to remember the hundreds of stories of innocent Black people with their hands up. I want you to remember the hundreds of stories of innocent Black people with their hands up or running away from the police and getting shot in their backs, getting shot in the back of their head, getting shot with their hands up. And how do some of these police officers get away from prison time? How do they avoid going to jail? It's qualified immunity. They have to say one statement: I feared for my life. And in a lot of these instances of unarmed Black people getting killed by the hands of the police, they have gotten off. The only thing that occurred to majority of them, they lost their job. Now, have some of them went to jail? Absolutely. Have some of them went to prison? Absolutely. But have those who have been, after investigation, conducted police brutality, gotten away scot-free and just by losing their job, but still having that freedom? What's the percentage of that? What's the percentage of that? You and I know it's a larger percentage of those this losing their jobs versus those who got incarcerated. That's the problem when it comes to police brutality. And this is why foundational Black Americans need to be a protected class. And that qualified immunity needs to be stricken from the police. It needs to be wiped away. It needs to be erased. That is the issue. That is the issue. And this whole thing about, affordable housing, quality education, and criminal justice. Now, when it comes to affordable housing, quality education, a lot of times, family, it boils down to money. When you look at HBCUs, a vast majority of Black Americans are going to HBCUs, but they're still using financial aid. What if we were paid what we are owed by this government, reparations, and you paid the money to those HBCUs? I'm not significantly saying that HBCUs will change, but I have a great inclination that an influx of money will be coming to the HBCUs by the way of Black people. Thus, the infrastructures of those HBCUs, the buildings, the tables, the lights, the faculty, the classrooms will be upgraded because of the influx of money versus government grants and or scholarships that really don't go to those HBCUs. Because what occurs is a lot of times is that, the financial aid, some people believe, and a lot of people may not know this, but a lot of times financial aid, the government may grant financial aid, but the money is not necessarily paid to the HBCU in cash. Because if I'm having an influx of financial aid from the federal government, the least I will be doing is renovating and upgrading the college. That is something to think about, because I know I said a lot there, and I don't want to go too far. I don't want to go too deep into that, but I want you guys to think about that. to ensure that their rights are protected. When Black people vote, they help to ensure that the government does not take away their right. I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one that says it, but I've told you that the Constitution needs to be updated significantly. The Constitution needs to be updated. It is not a perfect document. It will never be a perfect document, but it needs to be updated. It needs to be revised. It needs to go through a couple of revisions to set an example for future generations. When Black people vote, they show young people that they have the power to make a difference. That's a big fat lie, because let me tell you, we've been voting, and the only thing our young people have seen is the same old, same old. About 15, 20 years ago, when I was fairly young, I'm gonna be truthful to you. I didn't know that voting made such a big difference. I didn't know the power of voting. But voting just to vote doesn't work. The only way voting becomes a powerful tool for Black people, if we are voting in people who are targeting the Black community for their good, who are saying, you know what, I'm coming into office and I'm making Black Americans a protected class. I'm coming into office and I'm not giving out grants. I'm not giving out this. I'm giving cash payment reparations to those descendants of slaves by the lineage of their forefathers and ancestors. The problem is we keep worrying about all these other things that they continue to deflect on the Black community that doesn't benefit us. That doesn't benefit us. They got you guys out here voting for DACA. They got you guys out here voting for immigration. What has immigration done for Black Americans? Illegal immigration, legal immigration has only done one thing to the Black community. That is undermine us on so many accords. You know, I had a conversation. I'm not going to say any names of the conversation. It was at I won't even say the venue, but they're going to know who I'm talking about if they see this video. When speaking about who built the foundation of America, the question was asked, who built America? And mind you, all the people at this table were Black Americans, except for one person. This person was from the Caribbean. I'll just say that. This one person was from the Caribbean. Now, he didn't state that. Another Black American stated, well, they had indentured servants. And wait a minute. What do you mean they had indentured servants? And I had to calm down for a moment. I got a little excited. But I allowed them to finish. They're like, yeah, the Irish was over here and the Chinese was over here. And I said, okay, who built the foundation? Because I was breaking down to them, you know, I believe it was around the 1840s when Black Americans first established in building the first railroad in America on the East Coast back in 1843, 1842. And I said, it was 20 years later when the Chinese came over and started to help Black Americans to build the railroad. So what are you talking about? Well, you know, indentured servants, they were like slaves too. What are you talking about? They didn't even know the definition of indentured servant. Here's the thing. If an indentured servant was like a slave, why didn't they call them slaves? That's the first thing. If an indentured servant was like a slave, why didn't they call them slaves? That's because indentured servants had a tenure. They had a contract. They worked for 5 to 7 years to pay off a debt. They worked for 5 to 7 years to gain resources like land and houses and farms and etc. They didn't work free for hundreds of years. Until this day, I'm still confused. I'm totally discombobulated how our people do not know their history. And maybe I'm a little special. I grew up in Washington, D.C., where we learned Black history, where the majority of all my schools were predominantly Black. Maybe Black History Month was a real thing. Maybe I'm special. But that's just what it is. The conversation carried on, but that's kind of the point of it. And lastly, here they have voting is a right and a responsibility. It is important for all Americans, including Black people, to vote. Blah, blah, blah. Okay. But yeah, that's basically what I have for you this evening, family, because again, why we should vote. If you vote for nothing, you get nothing. And with that being said, be one.